In this video, I will share 10 Google Tag Manager best practices that you should follow if you want to get more out of it. The first thing that you do after you create a new GA4 property is to change the data retention settings. In the admin panel of your property, go to data retention. The default retention here will be 2 months, which honestly, I don't understand why Google is doing that, but you want to change this to 14 months. Because if this remains as 2 months, then you will be able to use only the data of the last 2 months in your explorations. So if you want to analyze the data of the last 14 months, of course, after you accumulate that data, then change this setting to 14 months and click Save. The next thing that you should do is to filter internal traffic, or in other words, exclude events and data coming from your device or your colleagues' devices. To do that, first of all, you will need to go to Admin, Data Streams, then select your website data stream, and then go to Configure Tag Settings. Here you should click Show More, and then define internal traffic. Here you will need to create a new rule, or multiple rules if you need that, where you will need to enter the IP addresses of, let's say, your house, your office, maybe your colleagues, and then you can keep this named, let's say, as internal. Then give it a name to this filter, but this is just for internal use, and then save this rule. After that is done, you will need to go back to the admin and then data filters. Here you will see internal traffic filter, and in your case, it will be set as either testing or inactive or disabled. I don't remember. But basically you will need to open this internal traffic filter, and it will be looking for the same value that you have defined in your data stream settings, and then set this to active. Once you do that, click Save. And from that moment, if the visitor comes to your website, Google Analytics is loaded, and if the visitor's IP address matches whatever you have in the data stream settings, that kind of data will not be included in your reports. But of course, keep in mind that then you will not be able to also see that data in the debug view. So while you're debugging, it might be a good idea to maybe change your IP address with a VPN service, or maybe browse with a different IP address that is not included in your data stream settings. Then the next tip is related to the number of web streams that you have in your GA4 property. If you have multiple subdomains, for example, a blog, the main website, maybe a support website, and you want to track how visitors navigate between those websites, and obviously you want to see that data in, let's say, the same report, then in this case, you should be using one data stream, which means that on all those websites, the same measurement ID should be used. You don't need to create separate web streams for each website. In fact, even Google Analytics interface will tell you the same thing. For example, here I have a website stream, and if I try to create another website stream, the interface will tell you that in most cases, a single web stream will meet your measurement needs. Because if you try to use multiple streams for each subdomain, then you might have some inconsistent results when it comes to session tracking. So it's better that you use the same web stream for multiple subdomains if they are part of the same user journey and you want to see the data of all those subdomains in the same reports. Then we have unwanted referrals. So this feature is designed to exclude certain referrals from your reports. The sessions coming from those referrals will still be tracked, but their traffic source will be changed from, let's say, paypal.com to direct, or later it might be reattributed to some other traffic source. Unwanted referrals are managed in the data stream settings. So you can click here, then go to Configure Tag Settings, Show More, List Unwanted Referrals, and here you can insert various domains. Usually payment gateway domains are inserted right here, because otherwise there is a chance that if a visitor lands on your site from Google search and then makes a purchase, there is a chance that the purchase will be attributed not to Google Organic Search, but to your payment gateway if the visitor was temporarily redirected to that payment gateway to make a payment. So check what kind of payment gateways are you using, maybe Stripe, maybe something else, and then include their domains right here. But if you're dealing with some spam referral traffic and you want to exclude that traffic at all, unwanted referrals is not a fix for that, because that spam traffic will still be in your reports. The only difference that this feature will make is that it will turn that traffic, that spam traffic, to direct traffic. Then the other tip is more like a gotcha rather than best practice. Google Analytics has several options when it comes to reporting identity. By default, it is set to observed, but also you have other options such as blended or device-based. The cool thing about reporting identity is that you can change it as many times as you want, and this setting is retroactive. In fact, it does not affect the data that is stored in your property. Instead, it just affects how the data is calculated and displayed in your reports. So for example, if you have a lot of unassigned traffic in your property, or maybe a lot of direct traffic, of course, there might be other reasons why you have this, but you can also try to change the reporting identity to device-based and see if that helps. Of course, you need to understand better how these features work, but this goes out of the scope of this video. My main message here is that you can play around with this setting and see if the changes in your report are meaningful. You can manage reporting identity by going to admin and then reporting identity. As I've said, there are 3 options, but the third one is hidden, so you should click show all. And honestly, I often use this one because it gives pretty good results. Although, of course, there are some limitations because this option right here relies only on cookies, while, for example, blended option relies on user ID, cookies, and also modeled data coming from consent mode. One thing that you have to keep in mind is that if you change the setting right here and you're using Looker Studio connected to Google Analytics 4, your numbers in Looker Studio reports will also change. But again, if you don't like what you see after you change this setting, you can always come back and change it back. Then the other tip is to use debug view when you're implementing something new in Google Analytics 4 and you want to test if the data is incoming properly. Even though debug view is not perfect and it has some glitches, it is still one of my favorite features because I can quickly see what kind of data was received by GA4. You can find it by going to admin and then look for data display and debug view. And here you can see all the events that were received by GA4. Of course, you need to enable the debug mode. So one of the ways could be if you're using Google Tag Manager, then just enable the preview mode of Google Tag Manager. It automatically enables the data display in the debug view as well. And here you can click on events, see what kind of parameters were sent. You can even, for example, expand the parameter and see the value, so everything is working just fine. It's not enough if you just have the tag fired, for example, in Google Tag Manager. You still have to check if that data actually received Google Analytics, and that's where you can use debug view. Then you must understand that it is quite necessary to customize the standard reports in GA4. The default set of standard reports in GA4 is quite limited. You don't have many reports. They might look different because there are several options, but the overall list of reports is not that big compared to the previous version of Google Analytics. So this makes it even more necessary to customize and build some additional reports that you can include on this sidebar, and then all other users of this property will also be able to see that. The report customization happens in the library section, and I also have another video on my YouTube channel about this. So if you want to learn about report customization, you can take a look there. And if you want to learn many more things, then take a look at my GA4 course, because we talk about report customization and building useful reports a lot in that course. The next tip is related to the question, how many GA4 properties do you need? And you can get that answer by answering this question. Do you plan to build reports that include data of multiple websites? For example, you have website A and website B, and then you want to know how many visitors did you get across all your websites. If you plan to build these kind of reports, then use one property for those websites. Have one property, one data stream, and then install that data stream on all those websites. If you don't care about that, then you are free to use separate properties. Then my tip would be to track not everything that comes to your mind, but track only what is important. This is one of the main philosophies that I try to teach in my Google Analytics 4 course. Learn more about the business, identify their key events, and focus on them first. If you have some questions along the way and you cannot answer those questions with your current data, then try to implement some event tracking, for example, that will help you answer that question. Because if you try to track everything right now that just comes to your mind, eventually you might end up with a hot pile of mess. Also, the more events you track, the higher the chances are that you will eventually hit the sampling limit. Then avoid sending custom dimensions to Google Analytics 4 that have too many unique values. In this context, you have to get familiar with something which is called high cardinality. Cardinality basically means the number of unique values. For example, some dimensions can be low cardinality, like device category, which in Google Analytics can have 4 different values. And there also might be high cardinality dimensions, such as company ID. If you're sending company ID with all events, and you have, let's say, hundreds of thousands of unique company IDs, then of course this dimension has very high cardinality. So if you are sending events to Google Analytics 4 and the cardinality is high, then you risk of starting to see the other row. Here is how it can be displayed in the report. You will also see the warning in the report saying something about data condensed. In a nutshell, this means that you have a lot of unique values, and then Google Analytics will group a lot of rows in the report into this one other row. And the worst part right now is that even if your report is not using the high cardinality dimension, let's say as a primary dimension, this issue still might kick in if somewhere under the hood, other dimensions that you're tracking have a lot of unique values. And currently, the definition of a lot of values is more than 500 unique values per user per day. And this applies to one dimension. So if you have, let's say, 5 custom dimensions, so all of them will have a separate limit of those 500 unique values per day. Like if you're sending more, then maybe this high cardinality issue will not kick in, but the chances of that happening increase significantly. But if you're sending some parameter which has a lot of unique values and you have not registered it as a custom dimension, then you will not have this issue with the other row. And the final, a little bonus tip, which is a little bit of the shameless plug as well, but it's very difficult to stay up to date with GA4, even for me, and it's my main job. So GA4 changes constantly, new things are added, some things are removed, and it's very difficult to stay up to date. So if you want to be up to date, and if you're working with GA4, that's what you should do, then consider subscribing to this YouTube channel. Then take a look at my blog, where I have a lot of resources, blog posts, and also you can take a look at my online courses. I regularly update my GA4 course, I support my students, so even though I am very biased here, I would say this is your best option to stay up to date. Of course, you can also follow other industry leaders, but Analytics Mania should be one of your top resources when it comes to learning and staying up to date with GA4. And these were the best practices that you should follow in Google Analytics 4. If you have anything else to add, then post a comment below the video. If you found this video useful, hit the like button. That will help me understand what videos do you like and what should I create in the future. Also, if you want to learn more about Google Tag Manager or GA4, then subscribe to this channel. My name is Julius, this is Analytics Mania, and I'll see you in the next video.